They seemed so confident, so in control, so detached. But the moment you go quiet, really quiet, something shifts. Suddenly, they text, they call, they post about you, they reappear with charm or rage. Why? Why do narcissists panic when you finally stop talking? Carl Jung didn't use the word narcissist like we do today, but he understood them better than anyone. And what he discovered will explain exactly why your silence is so powerful. Let's begin. For weeks, maybe months, you begged them to understand. You explained. You justified. You made excuses for their behavior and blamed yourself for reacting. You thought, if you could just be more patient, more kind, more calm, they would hear you. They would change, but they didn't. They ignored you, dismissed you, gaslit you, and eventually, you stopped explaining. Not because you didn't care, but because it was hurting you. And that's when something strange happened. They came back. But not with an apology. They came back with questions, accusations, passive-aggressive jokes, or a random hey smiley face as if nothing ever happened. And deep down, you asked yourself, why now? Why after I stopped trying? Carl Jung would say, it's because your silence broke the projection. Let's unpack that. Narcissists don't see you as a person. They see you as a mirror, a reflection they use to feel powerful, important, superior. As long as you're reacting, you're playing the role they need, the angry one, the crazy one, the overly emotional one. Every time you try to explain, they get to feel calm, in control, untouched. But when you go silent, the mirror disappears. And without that mirror, they're forced to confront what they've spent their whole life avoiding, the emptiness inside. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the rejected self, the unconscious pain we bury to survive. Most people hide their shadow, but narcissists, they build an entire identity against it. They create a false self, charming, successful, untouchable, to protect their fragile ego from collapse. And your silence punctures that illusion. Because now, there's no one left to perform for. No audience, no reaction, no proof that they still have power over you. And that absence feels like death to the false self. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That's what narcissists fear the most. Not your words, not your anger, not your boundaries, but your absence. Your refusal to feed the illusion, your detachment from their fantasy, because once you stop reacting, you stop being a character in their story, and they're left, alone with themselves." Let's go deeper. There's a reason they seemed so unaffected when you were crying, so calm when you were begging, so cold when you were honest. It wasn't strength, it was control. You were expressing vulnerability, and they were using that to maintain dominance. Every time you reached for them, they felt superior, not loved, not seen, superior. But your silence? That's not emotional weakness. It's psychological disruption. It changes the equation. Suddenly, they are the one waiting. They are the one confused. They are the one without closure. And for a narcissist, that's intolerable. Jung believed that silence is not the absence of communication. It's a different language, one that speaks to the unconscious. When you go silent, you don't just cut off conversation. You end the energetic agreement, the invisible contract that says, I will keep explaining my worth as long as you keep denying it. You burn that contract, quietly, peacefully, completely. And in that stillness, you become powerful. Because now, you're no longer seeking validation. You're resting in truth. That truth. You were never the problem. You were the mirror, the echo, the empath who felt too much for someone who could barely feel at all. You thought your words could heal them, but what they really needed was your silence, not as a punishment, but as a consequence. Because when love is one-sided, When understanding is weaponized, when empathy is used against you, silence isn't cruel. It's sacred. Jung wrote, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." Silence is acceptance, not of their behavior, but of their incapacity. You stop trying to change them, fix them, reach them, and in doing so, you free yourself. That's the transformation. Now, let's get practical. What actually happens when you go silent on a narcissist? Here are 3 common reactions, and why they're actually proof that your silence is working. 1. The Hoover. They pop back in with kindness. "I've been thinking about you. You meant a lot to me. Just wanted to say hi." It seems sweet, but it's not about reconnecting. It's about re-establishing control. They need to know they still have access, that you're still emotionally available, that they can still pull you back in. Don't respond to the bait, respond to the pattern. 2. The smear campaign. Suddenly, they're posting about toxic people, telling mutual friends you're unstable, twisting the story so they look like the victim. Why? Because silence threatens their false identity, and they need to restore the image, even if it means destroying your reputation. It hurts, but it also reveals who they really are, and it confirms one thing: your silence hit a nerve. 3. The rage. Out of nowhere, they explode. "You're so immature. Grow up and respond. You're acting like a child." This isn't about communication. It's about control slipping away. When they can't manipulate with charm, they escalate to aggression. It's not because you're wrong. It's because you're no longer available. Let the silence stand. Let the storm pass. Let their reaction expose the truth. But here's the hardest part. When you go silent, you don't just lose the narcissist. You lose the hope that they were ever going to change. That hurts more than any goodbye, because part of you still wanted the version of them they pretended to be. The attentive one, the funny one, the passionate one. But that version was a mask, and your silence is what finally shows you that. Not their cruelty, not their lies, but the moment they couldn't tolerate your peace. That's when you know. It was never love. It was possession. So what now? You stay silent, but not emotionally frozen, not repressed. You stay silent, with awareness. You use this space to feel everything you avoided. The grief, the anger, the guilt, you name it, you welcome it, you release it. Because Jung taught us, what we don't face controls us, but what we bring into the light sets us free. Eventually, you realize your silence was never about them. It was a message to yourself. I'm done explaining my value. I'm done fighting for basic decency. I'm done mistaking manipulation for love. You become someone who no longer needs to be heard to know they're right, someone who no longer needs to win to feel strong, someone who no longer needs closure to walk away. That's individuation. That's the path Jung spent his life teaching. And you're already on it. If you're still tempted to break the silence, try this instead. Write the message. But don't send it. Scream the words. But in a journal, feel the fire. But don't hand it to someone who only ever plays with matches. Let your silence become a temple, a place you return to rebuild, to remember, to rest. Because in the end, silence is not the absence of love, it's the presence of self-respect. The final line in the sand, drawn not in anger, but in awareness. And when you hold that line, not just for a day, but for as long as it takes, you heal something ancient, not just in yourself, but in your lineage. The women who couldn't leave, the men who weren't allowed to cry, the children who swallowed their voice to stay safe. You are the one who breaks the cycle, and you do it quietly. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." But today, you're not alone, and your silence is communication. It says, I've seen enough. I choose peace. I return to myself. And that return is what they feared most. Because when you return to yourself, you stop being a mirror for people who refuse to look at their own reflection. You stop being a fix for people who refuse to heal. You stop being a supply for people who can't generate love on their own. You become a sovereign soul. And a sovereign soul can't be manipulated. If this message reached you at the right time, comment truth below and subscribe for more. Carl Jung inspired insights every week. You are not broken. You are awakening. You are not silent. You are speaking a deeper language now, and your clarity will set you free.